So, what's going on with the God of War franchise? After Ragnarok, it feels like a lot of people are split on that question. Some fans want another game as soon as possible, while others think Kratos' story is definitively complete. And then there's a third group of truly ambitious fans who want Atreus to take over as like the god of Egypt or something. Here's the thing though, I don't think the real question is whether or not Santa Monica will make another God of War game. They absolutely will. The real question is, should they? Now, the interesting thing about God of War is that it already ended once before. People forget, but God of War 3 and the completion of the Greek saga really did feel final. Kratos basically murked everyone and just disappeared into the Shadow Realm. And for a long time, that was it. That was God of War. But eventually, somehow, not only did Santa Monica reinvent their entire franchise, but they did it in a way that kind of defined an entire era of gaming. They didn't just change the setting, they changed the entire approach. Kratos is now stoic and calm instead of angry and spiteful. Instead of large-scale Titan battles, we got up-close MMA fights. It was a big diversion from the original games that not everyone loved. But nonetheless, it worked. Then came God of War Ragnarok, which doubled down on the 2018 reinvention. God of War Ragnarok is interesting because I feel like it's the closest thing gaming has ever come to making something that feels like a season finale. Like, it doesn't necessarily feel like the end of an era, it feels like the end of the beginning of an era. Kratos effectively becomes a new person by the end of it, but a new person that is now on a whole other journey. Atreus leaves to find his own purpose, but we're kind of led to question where that's going to take him. Add to that just a whole bunch of other stuff going on with the side characters that feel like they're teasing spin-offs, and you get a game that very much does not feel like a conclusion. For the first time ever, we see a glimmer of hope in this vengeful demigod that we've seen crash out more times than we've seen him speak. That is a level of closure that only a few franchises ever really get a chance to pull off. Then again, we do live in a corporate man's reality. Many big publishers, whether we're talking about gaming, movies, or TV, have a habit of looking at the positive reaction that a good ending gets and immediately responding with further attempts to recapture the magic. Now, I'm going to set my personal feelings aside for a second and enter the terrifying world of business logic. God of War is one of Sony's biggest assets. These games sell millions. They win Game of the Year awards. People will literally fork over hundreds of dollars worth of a single console just to play them. And Kratos is basically PlayStation's mascot at this point. Sorry, Astro. So, from a business perspective, stopping here would be stupid, because unlike a lot of other franchises, God of War still has room to grow. Most other video game franchises are kind of stuck with the same formula that they've always had. But as we've established, God of War has already reinvented itself once before. So the potential for another reinvention or even just another continuation is much stronger for God of War than it would be for other franchises. There are dozens of other mythologies that this franchise could potentially explore. I already mentioned Egypt, but we also got Japan, Celtic mythology, and yeah, even Christianity. At this point, God of War is basically gaming's exchange student. The idea of an older, wiser Kratos traveling into new worlds and trying not to repeat his past mistakes is actually kind of interesting, especially because modern God of War isn't really about the senseless violence. It's more about the question of whether or not change is really possible, which means you can still keep that emotional core. I think that there is a thin line between continuing a story in a way that feels natural and dragging it on until it's on its last legs. And gaming is no stranger to that. It's a real possibility for the God of War franchise because here's the thing. Kratos has effectively completed his character arc. That is a difficult and kind of rare thing for a video game mascot. Look at video game characters like Mario, Link, or any of the Call of Duty protagonists. Video game mascots just tend to work when they're just as recognizable now as they were when they were conceived. But Kratos genuinely changed and was able to retain his status as the God of War, going from an outlet for pure rage to a introspective father figure. But then where do you go from there? You can't revert him back because it would make the Norse saga feel frivolous in retrospect. So forward, I guess? Hot take. I don't think there's much else that they can do with Kratos without it feeling a bit redundant. Focusing on the pull between his past self and his new self is something that Ragnarok already did extensively, and I guess my thing is that another game isn't really gonna deepen that much more. This is the difficult decision that I think Santa Monica would have to make if they commit to another God of War game. Do they focus a potential reinvention on the story aspects or more on the technical aspect? Is the gameplay going to be completely different? And if so, what does that mean for Kratos as a character? I think we would also have to consider what it would potentially mean for Sony in terms of the next-gen PlayStation features. How can this new potential God of War game deliver on a reinvention while also keeping Kratos at the top of Sony's Mount Rushmore? It's a lot, to say the least, and feels very risky considering that it feels like a no-brainer that they're going to have to make a new game at some point. I'm sure that they're considering everything on the table, including a potential game where Atreus is the main playable character. I don't know about that though. To be honest, I think that the right move would just be to wait a little bit, see how people feel about that new God of War show. I don't think God of War needs to be one of those franchises that has a new installment every few years. Maybe we don't get a new God of War game until we're nearing the end of the PS6 era. If anything, the wait itself, I think, would generate enough hype and anticipation for them to engage with it in a way that they probably wouldn't engage with it currently. God of War Ragnarok came out almost 4 years ago, but emotionally, it still feels kind of fresh, partly due to the fact that we also got a DLC for that game. I think if they immediately jump into a new big sequel, it risks undermining the entire thing. Now, we're probably going to be staring down the barrel of potential spin-offs and smaller stories. And while I don't necessarily think that would be a bad idea, I hope Santa Monica understands that Kratos is the gravitational force of this franchise. God of War can't exist without Kratos, and nothing's gonna change that. Here's the raw, unfiltered truth. People don't want another God of War game because they feel like the story's unfinished. They just want another story with Kratos. For as long as gaming exists, people are always going to want to see more from Kratos, whether he's fighting Poseidon or Jesus Christ. So does God of War need another game? Maybe, but not right now. I think that the Norse games are enough for the moment. Let us sit with them for a bit, and eventually, I'm sure someone will find a new story to tell with Kratos. I do think that there are still interesting stuff worth exploring with this character. It's just gonna take someone who has an actual story to tell and not another overly priced console that needs to be sold. But we'll see. Kratos is going to be around for a while, so I hope that whatever form that takes is one with purpose. Just take care of our boy, Sony.